This council meeting is being streamed live, recorded and published in accordance with council's live streaming and council meetings policy. To those present in the gallery today, by attending a public meeting of the council, you are consenting to your image, voice and comments being recorded and published. Anyone who is invited to read out a question or a presentation will be recorded, and their voice, image and comments will form part of the live stream and recording. The Chair and or the CEO have discretion and authority at any time to direct termination or interruption of live streaming. Such direction will only be given in exceptional circumstances where deemed relevant. Circumstances may include instances where the content of debate is considered misleading, defamatory or potentially inappropriate to be published. Attendees are advised that they may be subject to legal action if their actions result in inappropriate and or unacceptable behaviour and or comments. Today's meeting is being streamed live as well as recorded and published on Council's website. Thank you. Please ensure mobile phones remain off during the Council meeting. Please stand for the opening prayer. We pray to God to guide us so that the thoughts we have and the decisions made this day are in the best interests of the people of the South Gippsland Shire. The South Gippsland Shire Council respectfully acknowledges the traditional custodians of this land, elders past and present, their spirits and ancestors. Please be seated.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to suspend standing orders for a statement.
And the seconder, Councillor Skinner.
Vote.
Yeah, vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. The South Gippsland Shire Council would like to convey condolences and sympathy to the families and the community affected by the deeply disturbing tragedy in Christchurch. At times like this, we need to all come together and support each other. As Mayor, I will formally write to the Mayor of Christchurch City Council to convey this message. Do I move out of standards?
Move back.
Moved by Councillor Kuhn, seconded by Councillor Skinner. All those in favour? Unanimous. Councillor Alan Brown is on leave of absence granted at the ordinary council meeting 27th of February 2019. Do I have a mover for the confirmation of minutes?
So moved.
Councillor Brunt, and seconded by...
Before I move it, I need to say what I'm moving. There's been an addition to these minutes. We've also added in another meeting, which is a special meeting of council held on the 20th of March 2019 in the council chambers. That was missed, that meeting, so we've got 2 lots of minutes to move.
Thank you, Councillor. And the seconder?
I'm moving it, but I wish to speak to the minutes.
Yeah, seconder. Councillor Fawcett.
Thank you. I'm going to ask a question because that's what you're allowed to do on the minutes. The minutes are 1.6. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask 2 or 3 questions, points of clarification on the minutes. And I have a printed copy of what's in the minutes, and I'd like to pass that around to you, if you could please, councillors. So that, could I go to the Mayor, please? So that he's on the same page as I am. And that document states, this is from the agenda 27th February 19 confidential minutes, made public, because this is what these minutes today that we're going to confirm say, made public in the ordinary meeting of council on the 27th February 2019, the Chief Executive Officer position for South Gippsland Shire Council will be advertised for the period commencing the 25th of June 2019 in accordance with section 94(3) of the Local Government Act 1989, once council staff have been advised. Now I've got a question for the Mayor and I have a couple of questions for the CEO. Mr. Mayor, in the information released, do you note any reference to a vote or how Councillor Brunt or Fawcett voted. I'm asking you to look at those minutes. Do you see any reference?
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. CEO, does Council ever record from a confidential session when they transfer them over to what's released in an ordinary meeting? Is the vote ever recorded, Mr. CEO?
There's a resolution on the books of council that all votes are recorded in the minutes, regardless whether it's confidential.
Confidential, right.
Not.
Was it part of the closed session resolution to release the vote?
The minutes contain the information that...
That was released?
Oh, yeah. Right.
Okay. I'll leave it at that and make no further comment. Other people can join the dots to what I'm saying. Thank you.
Any other speakers?
There is no,
Sorry, Councillor Fawcett.
there is no speakers on the minutes. Proceed.
Sorry. All those in favour of confirming the minutes? Unanimous. Councillors, are there any conflicts of interest? Councillor Fawcett?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have a conflict of interest in, I think it's item 14, by way of, I'll just find it, an indirect interest by way of close association and indirect financial interest.
Any other councillors? Mr. CEO, are there any staff conflicts of interest?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Item 3.1, Draft Strategy South Gibson Road Safety Strategy 2019-23, moved by Councillor Skinner, seconded by Councillor McEwen.
The other way around.
Moved by Councillor Skinner, seconded by Councillor McEwen. Okay, Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. This is a recommendation that Council adopts the draft South Gippsland Shire Council Roads Safety Strategy 2019 to 2023, which is attached in our minutes. Council received a grant of $25,000 from the Transport Accident Commission to develop a road safety strategy for this period. The strategy embraces a series of safe system approaches to keep our road users safe. That include things like making the roads, paths, tracks and other transport infrastructure as safe as possible, encourage people to travel at safe speed, safe travel behaviour to minimise the risk, promote the use of vehicles that are safer for drivers, support active transport such as walking and cycling, engage with road safety partners, engage with the community so they can influence and contribute to road safety initiatives. And there is a series of identified actions that go with this strategy. In dot point, they are embracing that safe system approach, addressing the most severe risk locations, promoting the use of safe vehicles, encouraging people to travel at safe speeds, engaging the community, reduce risk for active transport users, and engaging with partners. It's taken some time to develop, and we've had a really great response. Over 400 surveys alone through the public survey to inform this strategy. The community, a number of departments across the council administration have worked together to form this view, and council itself has had briefings to keep us up to date. There are no additional resource allocations to implement the current strategy. However, some of those initiatives will require grant funding and external funds to implement. And so I do commend this strategy, but I do want to make 2 points about it. And one is that it's our major system of transport in our shire is our road network. But underpinning road networks and infrastructure is the provision of other options of transport. We've referred to 2 here, walking and cycling, but public transport. And I know it's not part of this strategy, but it sits alongside that as we make our roads safer, to have alternative options of transport. And the second one, whilst it's referred to in the action plan, is acknowledging the significant amount of wildlife implications on and deaths on our roads and how that does contribute to the safety of our roads. So the action item 5H is to communicate with the community the high likelihood of animals and wildlife crossing the roads. Now that's one strategy, and I think we need to be really creative in terms of how we roll that out and work with our community on it. And that we have a walkability strategy and a pedestrian safety in future planning. And whilst the resource does implications do mention grant funding and internal Shire resources, one bit that I think is missing there is the partnership opportunities we have with our communities to work really closely on initiatives that they may bring to the table or be able to champion that will increase that kind of awareness and safety on our roads. But overall, it's a really great document, and I would recommend that we support it. Thank you.
Councillor Kittle.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd just like to add in a little bit more details, which Councillor Skinner didn't follow. Safe roads are really a quality of life issue for people. And this is important that people are able to go around in their business, whether it's going to school or driving for work or whatever. The safe system, I should say that our council is getting an enviable reputation nationally for its work that it's been doing on road safety, which is a credit to our staff, Mr. Tamler. I think that should be conveyed to them. We're doing wonderful things with the heavy vehicle community, transport community. We've done some wonderful workshops with people towing caravans. There's a spate of caravans overturning in North Queensland at the moment, and most of them in Northern Australia, because they're not used to driving in those conditions. But we've had work, I think, through the men's shed. There was, I think, 120 odd people that went through how you actually drive safely with caravans and what's the difference on it. The safe road system that Councillor Skinner talked about is talking about safer roads, safer people, safer speeds and safer vehicles. But underpinning it, it's recognising three fundamental things. One is that humans are very fragile. If you're in a high-speed car accident, that people are fragile, obviously. The second one is fundamental, that people do make mistakes. I mean, people don't necessarily do it on purpose, but their driving behaviours cannot be at times up to scratch. And the whole issue of road safety is a shared responsibility for people. The positive side, deaths in the Shire in the last 5 years were 173 on roads, but the actual death per annum has dropped from around 40 to 25. So there's been a whole lot of preventive work done, which is really positive, because any death is a tragedy to any family. There are some things that I would like to mention. We're leading in the L to P program. We've trained now, I think we're up to 100 young people who would not normally have access to a parent being able to teach them how to drive. We've now had, I think, over 100 that's being done or will be done very shortly. And that's really important, because you don't get a job in these days if you haven't got a driver's licence. Councillor Skinner talked about the walkability strategy, which is very important. But the really interesting thing is 10% of all the transport movements in the Shire are by bicycle. And we might tend to forget that, but younger people, and indeed some older people now, are riding bikes, and they're very important. If you actually look at what people think of the reasons for accidents occurring, 70% of road conditions, and I'm very thankful that Council's looking at the gravel roads. There's got a consultation going on that. And we're also looking at the possibility of changing the speed levels on some of the gravel roads. 40% is driver behaviour, 35% is distraction. People are using mobile devices when they're driving. And it's the equivalent of being well over 08 drunk driving. That distraction is really problematic. I'm on the Gippsland Road Safety Committee for Council. The really interesting thing is that speed accidents are reducing, they're at 25%. Drink is reducing, but they reckon it's 20%, but the one that's starting to rise is drugs. And there, I was talking to the sergeant in charge of operations for this area. There's been a significant increase, and I think it's 15% of accidents are now coming from people on drugs. I think that this is a very positive step for council. I'm very strongly supporting what will happen. What will probably take 12 or 18 months, but Warrnambool City Council's just done a major thing on road safety for bicycles because it's a major part of tourism now. And we've got a major number of people coming into the district riding bikes. So they've done a range of things to provide a small lane or signage to say that there are bicycles using it. I think this is a commendable action, and it is one that builds on our reputation, which is already enviable in terms of our outcomes. Thank you.
Is there anybody against? Any other speakers? Councillor Argento.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I also wish to concur with my colleagues in regard to what we have here before us. You know, I attend as an emergency services worker all too often these types of accidents and what comes about, and I can, you know, the repercussions go on for many years afterwards, even if it's a minor accident as well, there are also repercussions, and not to mention how it affects the emergency services volunteers as well. This is a great clear vision and snapshot of our region, and it articulates it very well and dispels certain myths in relation to how accidents occur. I'll commend this document as well, and hope that everybody has a good opportunity to read through it.
Any other councillors? I'll put it to vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. .2 New Policy C73 Port Welshpool and District Maritime Museum and Collection Policy.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to defer this one for a moment. The reason for my deferral, if you like.
Yes, please.
So the reason for the deferral is that there are a number of questions that the committee and council have in regard to funding and and around a certain date period in which the collection is to be allocated to. So there we go, it's up on the screen. Councillor. That one.
Okay, do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Skinner. All those in favour? Unanimous. 4.1 Great Southern Rail Trail Ongoing Committee of Management and Arrangements. We have an amended wording to that. Mover is Councillor Argento and seconded by Councillor Skinner. To read out the amendment, the please.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I have a slight amendment to point 1, which is up on the screen there, or earlier if negotiated with the current Committee of Management.
Okay,
thank you, Mr Mayor. As you know, we've had previous Committee of Management staff for the Great Southern Rail Trail, all of which have contributed and done a fantastic job to where we're at today. We heard last week from the current representative from the current committee, asking or seeking assistance in regard to the amount of work for negotiations we've dealt. And the committee, we have this recommendation before us. We have the full recommendation up there on the screen here. Basically advise the Department of Environment, Land, Water and Planning that Council accepts the request to become the Committee of Management of the Great Southern Rail Trail from Languffe to Welshpool once the term of the current Committee of Management expires, including that or earlier if negotiated with the current Committee of Management. Advises the Department of Environment, Land and Water Planning that Council accepts the request to become the Committee of Management of the Great Southern Rail Trail from Welshpool to Headley, Shire boundary, and should the extension be developed. Continues to work with Wellington Shire Council to formalise an appropriate management model for the Great Southern Rail Trail in consultation with DELWP, and adjust Council's long-term financial plan in regard to the above recommendations.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you. We've spoken this last at the budget thing. Support this motion with the amendment, and really all I have to say is that this is an amazing asset for our shire that brings a lot of economic benefit and ability to our economies, our small towns, and it's due in many ways to our volunteer committees who have been very involved in the establishment phase of this asset. As it's joined up, the dots have been joined, it's become a gigantic responsibility for a committee of management. So I do support that, along with many other rail trails across the state and the country, that council is the appropriate authority. However, I do just want to say that the terms of that arrangement have yet to be decided, and equally that a big part of that will still be working with smaller localised committees around the various spots or towns. That's a really beneficial way to have partnerships. The Shire's obviously got the heavy plans and equipment resources, but there's very much a place for a local approach and caretaking of what is an asset for us all. So many thanks to all the establishment and existing and previous committee members who have helped to get this project up and running, and with the potential extensions down to into Wellington and potentially in the other part of the Shire, it's becoming a much bigger task. So there will be budget implications of this, but there may also emerge opportunities to look at other avenues that we can support that budget. Thank you.
Any councillors against? Any councillors? Councillor President.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I totally endorse Councillor Skinner's comments, and indeed the whole thrust of the rail trail program is commendable. It's bringing people to our shire, it's helping tourism, and it's activating spaces that would otherwise stay dormant. We still live in hope of having, as somebody once said to me, the toot toot of a train coming through this area. But the rail trail is an important asset that we can still keep that vision potentially alive. There is just one thing I would like to caution and ask Council in its negotiations with DELWP. We have seen the state government transfer a lot of costs to local government. Not in all fairness, always to our advantage. I would ask us please to, in this negotiation process with DELWP about the transfer of responsibilities and with the existing committee, to make sure that we take into account the true costs and make sure that the state doesn't just pass on unreasonable costs to the Shire. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Fawcett.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'm in support of this motion, but I would like to point out that this is a recurring cost, so year on year, and from memory, I think it effectively equates to about a 1% rate rise year on year. So it just outlines to us the difficulty of when we are dealing with recurring costs, because capital works can be our playground. We can decide to do something that's a once-off. But when we decide to do things like this, they recur forever, and there is no way known that anyone else will take responsibility for this once we take responsibility. I would actually urge Council in their next budget to have regard to what we are spending on our tourism and economic development budget in total, and take into account the fact that we are adding significant expenditure, hundreds of thousands of dollars of expenditure in this area, and if you don't have regard to the overall spend, I'm aware of at least 3 other things that we have in mind or have put in place that add another 1.5% in rate rises each year on year. So I think there's nothing wrong with doing this, absolutely, but we need to explain to our community that you can't do this without cost. And the cost could be at the sake of rate reductions unless we adjust our budget elsewhere. So I'm hoping that we have a look, or you have a look, at our budget next year in relation to what we are spending on this important area overall, and see if there can be savings made so that it doesn't become a continuing 1% increase together with the risk. But I don't think we've got a choice. It's a wonderful asset. It does have direct economic benefit to us, and it is worth maintaining.
Councillor McEwen.
I'd like to concur with Councillor Fawcett. We need to be prudent and careful in terms of our strategy for expenditure. I think the figures are around just under 0.75% is the actual cost on the rail trail. But I would point out, while you're right on, Councillor, you're right on one level of saying that this is an ongoing commitment. The reality is that we already spend 6% of our budget on capital works, new projects, each year annually. So I think that what we need to do, and I think your comments are very important, that we need to look closely at what we're spending in tourism and economic development and look at whether the benefit is there about whether it's capital or ongoing expenditure. We've got ongoing expenditure for the community, so the tourism information centres. But can I just take it down to my level of meaning? Meaning as a town, on some weekends now, is overrun with bicycles. The impact of that trail opening up for us has probably added 10 to 20% to the businesses that are in food and tourist type products. So I think that the economic case for the expenditure is there. I think that Councillor Fawcett is saying the same thing. I agree with him. We need to look closely at what we're spending both on capital and on recurring expenditure to make sure we're spending it. But can I just finish by saying the effort and the time that's been put in by volunteers on that committee has been fantastic over a long period of time. And I would point out, and I think it's been raised with us, that we need to make sure, and whatever new arrangements are put in place, that there is avenue for local voluntary committees to continue doing their work. We've got half a dozen people in Mannion who are very happy to do it, and I think they should be included in that process. And I know there are other people further along the trail.
Any other councillors? I'll put it to a vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. .2 budget allocation acquisition of former Government Road, Park Pound Road, Foster. Moved by Councillor Tento and seconded by Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is one in my neighbourhood. Council has a parcel of land on Pound Road, close to Foster. So the recommendation is that Council allocates $62,000 in the 2018-19 budget for the acquisition of an additional piece of land, which can then form part of this larger lot and incorporate and creating a larger lot. This will enable Council to acquire the land, to realise a greater land size potential for a future sale if Council so wishes. So once again, it's two small parcels. Once together, it will form a larger lot and enable a further allocation of $2,000 in income to the 2019-20 budget if the future sales of the consolidated land are realised. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
Just briefly, this has been going on since 2016, so it's a long, slow process. At the end of the day, I think it is a win, and I don't believe there's been any community angst about this. I hope I'm right about that, so I'm happy to leave it there and approve it. Recommend it.
Is there anybody against? Any other speakers? I'll move that to a vote. All those in favour? Unanimous. 4.3, endorse new road name, unnamed road off Foster, Mount Best Road, Mount Best. Mover, Councillor Gento, and the seconder, Councillor Skinner. Councillor Gento.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It all appears to be happening in my area at the moment. But this is just a road name, named an unnamed road. It has had community consultation and received a number of submissions. So it considers the result of the poll in noting that the votes returned were in favour of Stagecoach Track, I believe, Stagecoach Track. Named as such, given that in past history the Cobb & Co stagecoach stopped at a coach house which was up that road. It's basically a name change and subject to geographic names Victoria approval, of course, as all road names are. So, I would support this one. Thank you.
Councillor Skinner.
I have to speak. It's not your area, it's our area. But I do support this.
Anybody against? Any other speakers? All those in favour? Unanimous. Strategy revision, social community infrastructure blueprint 2014 to 29, revised March 2019. Over mover, Councillor McEwen, and the seconder, Councillor Cousin. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This social blueprint, which was prepared by the previous council, is a fantastic document. Previous to having this organised blueprint with principles and triggers and standards, the whole process of allocating council's resources was a lottery game of who had the numbers. So rather than necessarily making a decision based on facts, on numbers of users, whatever the targets, appropriate targets would be, quite often they were done on an ad hoc basis. This was done, and it was led by our former director, Jan Martin, and it was a fantastic process. It has gone through and identified principles for each category of social infrastructure, and then triggers for how many people need to be there and how that would then be developed through time. So really, this was a major advancement in the process of good governance. The Local Government Act is very clear. The Local Government Act, and I forget which clause, but it's one of the principles of the Act, says that through time, councils need to take into account the level of equity in the provision of services and facilities across the Shire. This blueprint does precisely that. It's not saying that every town should have every facility, but what it does say is that the larger towns of Korumburra and Leongatha have an entitlement to a certain level of service, then the smaller towns as you go down. There were 19 recommendations in the report originally, and a number of them have been fulfilled. The Carmi Community Centre, which we were told at the Korumburra Round Table last week, is now full. Literally, there's a couple of people that they could have, and a couple of young kids they could have in. That's been developed. The Korumburra Hub is not there, but the plans are well advanced and underway to develop it. A range of skate parks have been developed for young people. And the rail trail, as we were talking about earlier on, has come up as being a major activity. There are things that are still necessary to do, and they will be followed through this review. We've got an objective in our youth area to say we should look at developing spaces for young people. They may well be accommodated in the community hubs, but what we haven't done is done that yet, and we are upgrading our youth plan, so hopefully they'll have some involvement. There is also an issue in the plan that talks about smaller community hubs for smaller towns. The reality is at the moment we've got 9 towns. We've either got a neighbourhood house, a community house, a decent hall with facilities. There's probably a few more towns over the next 15 years that should probably have something like that. There is an issue which was raised by Councillor Cousin that we need to look at, and I think we're doing that, at how we have good transport to get to these facilities, and we have done some work separately on that matter. There is also a growing school population, preschool population. So there are issues emerging in Venus Bay, there's issues in Myora, because we're actually starting to grow. We're now on the period in front, and the rate of growth could rise quite steeply and dramatically, and that will have implications. But the good thing about this plan is that it's actually got targets and levels and standards so that we will know what we need to do with. There's other work that still needs to be done. In Murray North, we've got to look at the expansion of the kindergarten. We've also got to look at potential the upgrading of the leisure centre there. Foster is down to look at the potential upgrading of the basketball stadium there. And there's a Leongatha hub, which would be the library and other facilities that's on the agenda. So there's still more work to do, but can I commend this to you as being a really professional approach with good governance that doesn't do things on an ad hoc basis, but has strategic decision making in a way that is good for the outcomes for the community as a whole. Thank you.
Councillor Cousins.
Thank you. I commend this project and I urge councillors to support it. And I appreciate Councillor McEwen, your reference to my concern about public transport. The CEO has reminded me that before I came onto council in August last year, the Shire undertook quite extensive consultation on the needs for public transport. There is still further work to do on that, and I think that we need to bring that forward as a complement to this. The blueprint is very much to do with council assets. A public transport strategy or some form of action on public transport is obviously beyond council's control. But nonetheless, we can stimulate action at a higher level of government and focus their attention on some of the needs within the community, as indeed our aged community is focusing attention on the needs for public transport. So I don't want to digress from the importance of this blueprint, but I do recognise that what it's doing is gradually moving us into a shape where our community centres are more consolidated and multiple facilities are efficiently run together. So there are new ways of working in a tight economy, and that's really what we're looking for in the blueprint. I commend it to you. Thank you.
Any councillor against? Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Singer.
Thank you. I also commend this document. I was involved in the consultation for it. I'm sure many of the people here and councillors also. This is a review of the existing document, and we do need to do that really annually because things are changing really quickly, and these kinds of strategies and documents really need to be live documents. So they're always assessing what's happening on the ground. Sometimes I'll note that the report's been updated with the 2016 data, but it also acknowledges that since that time, we're now 2 or 3 years down the track from that time, we're seeing an increasing ageing population, and particularly in the areas where traditionally it might have been part-time community members or holiday homes, people retiring to their holiday homes, particularly in Venus Bay and Sandy Point was mentioned in the report. And ageing across our Shire, and Councillor McEwen also mentioned the facilities for our younger community. So as different people are moving into the area, so we've got the potential kinder or preschool area in Myora, but probably in our coastal areas is looking for that as well. So it definitely needs to be a live document that's reviewed all the time. There is a proposal to do a big review of it, which we will have to put some resources to over time in, sure, that is 3 years, 2 years, $100,000 to review that. And I very much support Councillor Cousin view of the new way of working, and that does give us opportunities to look at our facilities and our update and look much more in partnership and collaboration, looking at what's happening across all levels of our community, and let's embrace new ways of working. So happy to recommend this updated document.
Any other councillors? I'll move that to vote. All those in favour? Unanimous.
I'll move that.
Policy review, C51, councillor support and expense review, moved by councillor McEwen, seconded by councillor Rich. Councillor McEwen.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The government has outlined in two documents a minimum toolkit and recommendations how remuneration should be done. This has to be translated into a council, into a formal policy. We had a recent audit report last year that made a number of recommendations in terms of improving how these procedures are undertaken. All of those recommendations have been taken up in the revised document. The document has been prepared by council officers. It's then been discussed with council on a couple of occasions and has come back. What we need to do for the community is to ensure that the public that there are proper bona fides in the claims that are made by councillors, and that we use resources as prudently as possible. So there has been some tweaking of the travel claims, and they've made a separation between if I happen to travel to go to the supermarket, that's a primary, so it's a secondary purpose, and therefore I shouldn't claim if I happen to drop into council on the way through. So these are really principles. They're talking about also that we submit monthly within 7 days at the end of the period, and there is an out clause that can go to the mayor if necessary if it's late, that we publish on a quarterly basis with the expenditure, and it's online, so everything is transparent and people can see it. And the councillors be refunded for travel, for meetings that they're on, for advisory committees, for community functions, for inspections. And the principle underlying this is that under the Local Government Act, councillors should be accessible to their community and in a responsible manner. So we've spelt that out. Basically, the councillors' toolkit is fairly standard, that we're provided with mobile phones, with computers, with internet access, and limited printing facilities, and limited support from council staff and postage. So what I'd like to reiterate is that this has been a joint collaboration between council senior staff and the council in preparing it, that it met all of the recommendations of the recent audit committee, and I think it's refined in a nice balance between having an accessible councillor and also being transparent and accountable about expenditure. I recommend it to you.
Councillor Rich.
Thank you very much, Councillor McEwen. It is, I think, a stalwart that we need to be efficient and effective in the use of funds, and coming from the councillors who are the democratic representation, we do try our hardest to make sure that transparency and accountability is there. There are certainly, the government doesn't see the remuneration as a salary, it sees it as a volunteer job, that we therefore need some type of remuneration to perform that function. I must say the number of kilometres that I now do on all of the different boards and things that I sit on, I'm sure that they are quite substantial, and it is absolutely correct that I need to be putting in every single one of these things in the right time. Sometimes we don't always get in on that day because we're very busy, but regardless, it is essential that you can see the accountability of all the funds that get spent on your behalf, trying to make an improvement to our community. So on that basis, we have looked at what the state government has said. We have looked at how we interpret that with our officers, and all recommendations have come back. This is an ongoing process, so at this point in time, everything that we have seen, that we have tried to incorporate. If there is anything else that comes up in the future, we will continue to review and revise our policies to ensure that we continue to deliver an efficient and effective outcome for our community. So on that basis, I do ask for my fellow councillors to support this, and hope that our community also appreciates
but we are trying our hardest to deliver the best and most efficient thing for you. Thank you very much.
Any councillor against? Any other councillors against the grant?
This policy was reviewed, this councillor support and expenditure policy. It was reviewed in probably 2017-18, and recommendations were made by the council. What we had before that, we had an audit committee report. The audit committee undertakes an integral and active role in risk mitigation. They made recommendations of what needed to be adopted. Those recommendations were not adopted by this council, and that was in March. It was actually deferred in March, and it was brought up in April. It came back, and what came back was not the policy the officers put up, was the policy that very watered down policy, the original policy, and it included child support. Of course, child support is allowable under the Act, and that was done. So what we did, and I have got the March meeting, instead of adopting recommendations, and I can clearly remember, if anyone would like to go back and look at the live streaming in the March meeting when it was wanted to be deferred, and I think it may have been deferred by you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not sure, but anyway, I think it was. So we don't adopt that. We say in the meantime, I want to bring the old policy back. Let's bring the old one and we'll just do a couple of little tweaks. That's why we're here today, because why we've had to re-look at this or review it is in response to concerns raised by the municipal monitor, the aspects of the internal auditor's report. They weren't adopted. So the risk remained the same. So this is why we're back here now, and I'm very pleased to see councillors are wanting to adopt this policy, this revised policy that includes these recommendations. And watching the live streaming, which I had a bit of a watch this morning, I clearly, and it's interesting that former councillor Maxine Field, we welcome you here today. My understanding was her and I both fought on how can you have a 3-month or whatever it was, 6 months before you have to put your expenditure in. How does that help your financial reports at the end of the year to be correct? We both argued on it. And I believe councillors at the time, and I did say at the time, councillors were interested. They don't know that it's a misunderstanding of your role. You are here to do the best by the community that you represent, not by the councillor, to make the councillor alongside you happy with a report. But I'm very glad and recommend adopting this today, and I'm glad it's come back. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Singer?
Thank you. Councillor Brunt's raised 2 points that I was also going to raise. Firstly, to acknowledge that we have been here before, and to acknowledge former Councillor Keel here today, which is lovely to see. And one of the concerns that it was not only Councillor Brunt and former Councillor Keel that talked about was about that accountability and about how our quarterly reports really do need to be accurately reflecting our council report. Anyway, we're here now and we're addressing these, and in part in relation to recommendations from the Audit Committee and some government's advice and recommendations from our municipal monitor, I believe. And so I think this is a good version of the report, and I'm happy to adopt this. Thank you.
Any other councillors wish to speak? Councillor Nottingham.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also point out that we didn't completely divest our obligations in reporting. At that meeting Councillor Brunt spoke about, we did vote to ensure all our costs were submitted on our website for the public to see where our expenditure is, and that continues to be done.
Councillors, I'll put that to vote. All those in favour? Unanimous? Seven point one, notice of motion 724, council expenditure and code of conduct review findings to be made public. Move for this.
Also move, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Fawcett and a seconder.
So,
Councillor Brunt. Councillor Fawcett.
Serendipity, Mr Mayor, that this follows on from the previous motion because it effectively is tied up with it. The recommendations coming from the Audit Committee were in response to this finding, and I think it would stand the public in good stead to have a summarised version of that made public to understand the need some 7 or 8 months ago, or even longer, as to why the previous motion should have been passed at that time. I think it puts it into context. It's part of the failure of this council today to recognise good governance in relation to these sorts of things, and I think it's entirely appropriate that the public be made aware of the circumstances that caused the need for that review. So it needs no further ado than that. It's quite straightforward. There's nothing in there for us to be concerned with. It does identify practices that were not necessarily considered to be reasonable, but the policy review that's been undertaken in the previous motion to some point addresses those concerns. So I commend it to councillors.
Yes, Councillor Linden.
Mr Mayor, I have an amendment to the motion I'd like to put.
Please put it up.
Forward to the officers, if they can check the remarks.
The motion hasn't been seconded, Mr Mayor.
Well, it has been seconded.
It needs to be put up on the screen first, Councillor Fawcett.
Come through.
Oh, sure. It was downstairs.
Oh.
I've sent it through with the princess. Happy to read it. The old fashioned pen and paper model.
Switch.
please.
Okay, councillor, the amendment is on screen. Councillor Argento, please stand and read it out and explain.
Yeah, thank you. Mr Mayor, although I do agree with the sentiment behind Councillor Fawcett's motion, I'm not sure if I agree with the motives why he's just chosen one particular document. So this one actually requests that the Chief Executive Officer bring a future report on confidential documents to Council that may be released. There is greater interest in this one document.
Do I have a second for Councillor Skinner? We need to vote on that.
Can we seek clarification?
Is that the amendment?
That's the amendment.
Well, point of order, Mr Mayor. That amendment does not in that amendment does not in any way
So what's the
include.
number? What's the board number?
Mr Mayor, procedural. You have specifically stated there's no numbers
Councillor
here.
Brown, please take a seat.
Right. The motion having 52A, Mr Mayor. A motion having been moved and seconded may be amended by leaving out, inserting or adding words which must be relevant to the original motion and frame so as to complement it as an intelligible and consistent whole. Now, Mr Mayor, Councillor Argento, and by the way, what happened to surprises? We all seem to agree with them unless it suits us. But anyway,
Sorry, Councillor, please sit down. Sorry to debate. You made your point of order. I have to make a decision now.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Okay, I rule that the amendment here is leaving out or adding words as per 50A, 52A, and it makes it a more consistent motion in that it's inclusive of the original motion and it opens up to all confidential documents, not just a single one. So that improves the motion in my view, so I'll accept this amendment.
Mr Mayor, you are deluded.
Excuse me, that's out of order. That's out of order.
Well, sorry,
That's out of order.
you are.
You are out of order, councillor. Under section 106, you are out of order. So we need to vote on this amendment now. Councillor Dida, would you wish to speak to this now?
Hang on, you have to move that the amendment be accepted.
Sorry. We will now vote on whether the amendment is accepted. All those in favour? Councillor McEwen, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Argento, Councillor Hill, Councillor Ridge, Councillor Cousin. All those against? Councillor Fawcett and Councillor Brunt. The motion is carried. Councillor Argento, no need to speak to the motion, please. The motion becomes this.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. And in relation to this motion, I spoke that it's not just one document that appears to be targeted and pointed to certain individuals. It relates to all documents that the public have an interest in. There are a number of documents that I've been approached and the community with the public interest are wanting to know details about. This enables the CEO to come back to us with a report on these confidential documents that may be released.
I'd like to move an amendment, please, to the motion. I might take a minute. That this is very loose, that's putting it back on a future report. The other one, what we need is what reports do we want released? This is
Councillor Brown, we're not debating this.
Okay,
Please take a seat until you work out your amendment.
Could I have a minute, please, to
Yes.
ask the officers to in there all documents relating to codes of conduct, code violations. Any document in that field needs to be released that's been anything. Let's make it open and transparency. That's what we stand for, and I'd like to put that up there. This is not for councillors to come back and just pick.
Councillor Brown, we've got some words for amendment.
Yeah, just told them.
It should be limited to
Limited to
council conduct.
councillor conduct and mediation.
I mean, that relates, Mr Mayor, to
Councillor Fawcett, please stop interjecting.
Well, it wasn't
Please stop interjecting.
such an abusive motion.
Councillor Fawcett, I've asked you for the chair to stop
So I'd like to
interjecting.
move
You're out of
suspend
order.
standing orders to discuss, Mr Mayor.
Yeah.
Okay, all those in favour of suspending, we have a seconder. All those in favour of suspending standing orders? Not carried.
All those for?
I said all those four, no one put their hand up.
Right, sorry.
I'm not sure what the officers have any words. What other words the officers are supposed to be putting up on the
Well, I
screen?
thank you. Councillor conduct.
May should be. Should be not may. Should be not may. The may be released, that's the council off the hook.
Should be released, not may. See how open and transparent we want to be. Absolutely.
Order is great.
Is that what you want, Councillor Blunt?
The council requests the Chief Executive Officer to bring a future report on and limited to councillor conduct. Limited to councillor conduct and mediation documents. What's to council? What's the, why is it the
It's
two
not confidential, Jody, councillor, that word, please. Councillor, yeah, conduct, mediation documents, to councillor.
two councillors that are relevant to council? There's something wrong there. So that means documents, just the two council there needs to
Conduct matters.
take out, yeah.
Conduct matters comes in.
Huh?
Conduct matters is
It
Councillor,
should be released relevant to conduct matters. All right, thank you. I think we have been operating in openness and
sorry, we
transparency.
just need to get the wording up there.
I thought we
Now, if
had-
you read that wording, the mover was Councillor Brunt and the seconder was Councillor Fawcett to the officers. Councillor Brunt, you may speak to that.
In our council plan,
That's the amendment. It's now you move that the amendment be accepted or not, Mr Mayor. Then she speaks there. This is the amendment.
Yeah, it's supposed to stand read out now.
Oh.
the council requests the Chief Executive Officer to bring a future report on and limit to do councillor conduct and mediation documents that are relevant to councillor conduct matters that should be released in the best interests of the community. Am I allowed to speak now?
I'm going to decide whether to accept that.
You're deciding whether to accept it.
I have to decide whether I accept that.
Well, who's made the point of order? Mr.
Councillor
Mayor?
Fawcett, please stop interjecting.
Well, who's made the point of order, Mr Mayor?
It's an amendment. I have to decide whether I can accept the amendment, Councillor Fawcett.
You're being watched.
This amendment appears to diminish the number of reports that could come back to council because it's not the whole set of documents, the whole set which is in the existing motion. This appears to limit it to one subset. So I don't see how this is an improvement to it, but I will put it to the vote to see if the council wishes this to be amended. So all those in favour of this amendment being the motion, all those in favour?
Are you going to vote for it?
Oh, yeah, I'm going to go for it.
Councillor Fawcett, Councillor Brunt, all those against? Councillor McEwen, Councillor Argento, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich, and Councillor Cousin. The amendment is not carried. We go back to the original motion. Okay, we'll go to that. Councillor Argento, you may speak now.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. As previously discussed, it is in the public interest to look at and review documents and ensure that those that were made confidential at some point can be released. And we've left that to the CEO to best determine. He is aware under which legislations certain documents can be released. And my motion is in regard to documents he may perceive to bring to council in order to be released.
Councillor Singer.
I agree that this amended motion enhances the motion, addresses the intent of the original motion and meets our obligation about transparency and accountability. I believe I heard Councillor Brunt say we're being watched, which I found not sure what she's talking about there, and that she's not afraid of openness and transparency. I don't believe any of us are. I think it's in the best interest to bring as much information as is possible, and the CEO is in the best position to determine what must, according to various parts of the Act and regulations that we abide by, is appropriate to be made public. So I have no problems with that. I feel like the public wants and deserves that. And I will just say that I take exception to Councillor Fawcett's comment about the failure of governance in his first motion there. I am part of this council. You are part of this council. We are all part of this council. I found that to be derogatory. But I'll support this motion.
Please stop interjecting, Councillor Brunt. Any other councillors wish to speak on this? Anyone against? Anyone against? Councillor Fawcett.
Well, the public will look on this as a day of shame for councillors, to be honest. I've never seen such a nonsensical motion put up.
Yeah.
I expect that Councillor Argento has thought of this morning. So we're going to be now looking at all confidential documents, all commercial legal matters, everything. Going back for 15 years, Mr. Argento, or Councillor Argento, going back for 2 years. It's a nonsense motion, and the 6 of you are hell-bent on keeping from the public the things that have occurred in the last 2 years. Hell-bent that you pass a ridiculous motion like this, because what's going to happen? It'll come back and you'll vote not to refer to it. It's as plain as day plain as day. The public should be outraged at this abuse of your position. The motion that I brought was one motion. If Councillor Argento is so keen to open up to the sunlight, he can put a notice of motion to the next council meeting. A much better framed one that doesn't have officers looking back over confidential documents for the last 20 years because of the absurdity and the need for secrecy in this council group. You should be ashamed of yourselves. There is nothing wrong with the motion as was put. I'll vote for that motion.
Point of order,
which has got
Mr. Mayor.
there.
Please sit down,
Point of
Councillor Fawcett.
106A, derogatory or defamatory to any councillor, all councillors and the organisation.
Thank you. Councillor Fawcett, you are being derogatory to council. Please keep your words to appropriate time.
I think my words are entirely correct, Mr. Mayor, but I'll continue. So, what are the officers to do? What are they to do with this motion? It is just a guise, a ruse to stop the public understanding what has happened in this 2-year term of public. It's entirely typical of the logic. Can anyone point out what was wrong with the motion? It was to bring forward and allow the public to see what was occurring in relation to a motion that you as a group refused to admit to over 7 or 8 months ago. You're running catch up all the time with Councillor Custin. I take your point, you weren't here. But you are still voting for this nonsense. I've said it, please. And Mr Mayor, your ruling is absurd. And for these councillors to take to that...
Point of order. Once again, derogatory or defamatory to any councillor and the organisation.
Yes.
No, it's true, Mr Mayor.
No, I agree with that. Moving on, the councillor, any other councillors who wish to speak? Councillor Brown.
It appeared in a meeting of 400 people in the Memorial Hall, and it was brought up that there's been no codes of conduct in this council ever brought up. There's been nothing because everything's hidden.
Councillor Brown, skip the motion, please.
I am. Are you scared I'm going to say something? But what I'm saying is, we need to put it out there, what we know. The people want to know, they're asking to know. Had councillors turned up at that meeting, they might have found out. That the public wants to know, not blame a mayor at the time that there was nothing happened in this council.
Point of order. Debate relevant to the motion, Mr Mayor.
Which bit's not relevant to the motion?
Please stick to discussing.
The motion is
Councillor Skinner, please stick to the motion on the screen. The council requests the chief executive officer to bring out a future report on confidential documents to council that may be released. Not about what happened last week or anything else, please.
I'm making my point. And what this motion's doing is getting a report back to councillors. Is this report going to be coming to open council, all the documents that will be released? Or are you going to decide behind closed doors which documents should be released? Are you councillors going to decide behind closed doors which one of those documents the CEO's been ordered to bring back? You're going to do it behind closed doors. Can you make the report that comes back from the CEO that could be released? Can you make that in open council? Thank you.
Any other councillors? I'll move that to the vote. All those, sorry. Sorry. Any other councillors? No. There's a right to reply. Right to reply is Councillor Tinto.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. A lot of discussion about, perhaps a promise that was made to the community that can't be fulfilled in relation to Councillor Fawcett's motion. It can't be fulfilled until the CEO reviews all documents or related documents that he believes can be brought forward for release. We're looking at releasing documents that could possibly be unlisted. And that is up to the CEO to determine. It's not up to the council. It'll come to a report to council to inform us, and then the discussion can happen. I'm of the view that documents need to be released, and they can't be held as confidential forever and a day. But that is entirely up to the CEO. The nonsensical approach, that we've heard from Councillor Fawcett, his motion targeted one document. Why one document? This one talks about a range of documents. You've got to ask yourself, and I'll let the community decide why Councillor Fawcett is choosing that one document in his motion. This one refers to multiple documents, or who knows what it refers to. It's up to the CEO to bring it to us, which he perceives as being documents that can be released. So I'll leave it there, councillors, and I hope you'll support this amendment.
I'll put that to vote. All those in favour of the motion? Councillor McEwen, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Argento, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rees, Councillor Custin. All those against? Councillor Fawcett, Councillor Brunt. The motion is passed. 7.2, notice of motion, Australian Coastal Councils Association. Do I have a mover? Councillor Skinner, and a seconder, Councillor Rich. Councillor Skinner, please.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is a simple one that is asking for council to endorse the communique from the Australian Coastal Councils Association as described, and I am going to take the time to read this out. I think it's very important. In March 6th to the 8th of 2019, there was the Australian Coastal Councils Conference, which I attended on behalf of my council colleagues and the organisation, along with a staff member. In January and February 2019, the Australian Coastal Councils Association Incorporated conducted a survey of coastal councils to collect information on the major issues of current concern to councils in Australia's coastal areas. After considering the findings of the survey, which were presented to delegates attending the conference in Kiama, New South Wales, representatives of the coastal councils endorsed the need for 5 key policy initiatives, which are outlined in the following communique. The representative also endorsed the need for effective actions to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. The communique is as follows. We call on the Australian Government, I'll just firstly say that we are a member of the Australian Coastal Councils Association. We call on the Australian Government to adopt the following key policy initiatives with the aim of developing a coordinated national response to deal with coastal hazards, including rising sea levels, more severe extreme weather events, and widespread coastal erosion. Number 1, resources to manage the coast on behalf of all Australians. Introduce a national funding formula to provide the resources necessary to manage and maintain the coast effectively on behalf of all Australians, including the funds needed to increase the adaptive capacity of councils to address climate impacts. Number 2, allocate financial assistance grants to address coastal hazards. Broaden the range of disabilities listed under the financial assistance grants to include factors such as the vulnerability of coastal areas and communities to coastal hazards. 3, intergovernmental agreement on the coastal zone. Develop a coordinated national approach to coastal governance through an intergovernmental agreement on the coastal zone in cooperation with Australian, state, territory and local governments. This would clearly define the roles and responsibilities of each tier of government in relation to coastal zone management. National coastal policy. Ensure that the intergovernmental agreement on the coast zone forms the basis for a national coastal policy which outlines the principles, objectives and actions to be taken to address the challenges of integrated coastal zone management for Australia. And 5, increase funding for Australian climate research programs. Allocate increased levels of funding for Australian climate science research programs conducted by CSIRO and other research bodies, including the restoration of funding for the National Climate Change Research Facility or establishment of a similar body, and continuing support for Coast Adapt. This is essential to ensure appropriate guidance in relation to responding to coastal hazards and is accessible to Australia's coastal councils so that coastal communities and assets are adequately prepared to address the adverse effects of climate change impacts. The scale of dealing effectively with coastal hazards along Australia's vast coastline requires a national approach, national leadership and national funding. We therefore call on the Australian Government to play a lead role in addressing these challenges in consultation with local government authorities which are knowledgeable in relation to these matters and connected to their communities. So we do know we are facing some big challenges in our local areas, but they are very much state and national, in fact probably global challenges. This paper was developed in consultation with all of the member councils from the Australian Coastal Councils Association, and as mentioned was endorsed at the annual conference. I believe we have a real role to endorse this as a united approach from fellow coastal councils to really call out to the national government to support our coastal areas. We bear the impact of climate adaptation, erosion, etc., and yet we have little funds to address those issues. So I do ask that my fellow councillors endorse this communique and support this notice of motion. Thank you.
Councillor Rees.
Thank you very much, Councillor Skinner. For me, this is one of the main games that we need to be addressing in council. We have large issues to do with our climate. And if we look at the last generation, such as my father, he still sits there going, there's no such thing as climate change. It's just a hotter day than it was back in 1924. But we have to address it. And I congratulate Councillor Skinner. I'm also on the Coastal Council as well. I only go to every one or two because she'll take up the mantle of the other. Being able to address what is going to be a serious impact economically, as well as culturally and community, is to me what we're here to be able to try and shape for the future of our communities. When the insurance industry, and I've said this a number of times, when the insurance industry becomes the canary in the coal mine, when they're the ones leading the way on climate change adaptation, then we have a problem. That's the game we need to be playing. We need to be working out how can we best position ourselves to ensure that we adapt to the changing environmental, economic and social environment that's coming our way. We can either continue to stick our head in the sand and the cost goes up, or we can work together as a community, work out what things we can do, and then with that community work together with the state and federal government. So to me, these are the things that are the most important, that, not just for my generation, but the future. It should be able to create jobs, it should be able to create innovation industry, it should be able to increase our economic capacity if we are able to manage these issues correctly. So on that basis, I think this is the type of thing that I'm really proud to be a part of. And so hopefully that we can move together in a collaborative way to find those solutions. So on that basis, I implore my fellow councillors to endorse this as well, so that we can be a part of what needs to be the real game and the real solutions that will make an impact and a difference to all of our lives. Thank you very much.
Any council against? Any other councillors? I'll put that to the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous? (8.1) Financial Performance Report, July 2018 to February 2019. Councillor McEwen moves it and seconded by Councillor Cousin. Councillor McEwen.
Very briefly, for you, Mr Mayor, this financial report is a 6-monthly report. It is about monitoring financial impacts and looking at comparing budgeted figures with actual outcomes. The report is incredibly healthy. We've actually gone from a working capital ratio, which is how much money is available, from 1.32 to 1.59, which means there's a lot of money sitting in reserves. And our requirement under the financial plan is only 1.25, so we're in a very healthy position. Our surplus estimated for the year has gone up by $836,000 to $14.96 million, which is a significant surplus again. And while we've had some expenditures above and below, which is a normal part of the process, basically we're tracking very well. We're a bit behind on capital. We are a reasonable amount behind on capital expenditure, which is normal. It depends on the conditions and when contractors are available. But that will hopefully be picked up as we progress through the year. But all in all, it's a very strong report. We report basically, in the report there's a set of financial statements for council for that period. There's major variations on budget and expenditure. There's an year-to-date financial analysis, and there's also analysis in relation to the financial indicators of the long-term financial plan. But as I say, they are incredibly healthy. Any council in the state who would say they've got a 1.59 working capital ratio is way out in front.
Any other councillors? Sorry, Councillor Cousin. Councillor Cousin, you're the seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. And thank you, Councillor McEwen, for your comments. I commend the long-term financial statement that is provided here. Council is in a very sustainable position in its long-term, 15 years out, and that is really an important position to be in. It makes the Shire robust, it gives us the capacity to take action, urgent action where it's needed, and gives us the resilience to carry on some very tight financial circumstances which we may well anticipate in the future. This report shows, as Councillor McEwen has highlighted, so I won't go into it too much, but it does definitely show the operating results have a surplus at the moment of $863,000. This is ahead of the budget as it currently stands. The capital expenditure is $3.6 million behind the year-to-date budget, but this is largely due to delays in having commenced works. I would draw your attention to a further item in the document, and that is that council has an interest-bearing loan that is shown as a current liability. This is due to be repaid in January 2019. That liability will be repaid, and that liability will be removed. So it's demonstrating that we have that interest-bearing loan, but it is to be repaid and will be repaid on time. Councillors, I do, and members of the community, I do ask you to have a look at this. I know quite a few of you certainly will, and we appreciate it. Thank you.
Any councillors against? Any other councillors? I'll put out the vote. All those in favour? Unanimous?
Mr Mayor, can I suggest we move 8.2, 8.4 and on?
Move the 8.2, 8.4 by Councillor Gento.
Oh, sorry.
8.2 to 8.4. Seconder for that? Councillor Skinner. 8.2 is Assembly of Councillors, 22nd January to 21st of February. 8.3, document seal of auditor extended by CEO 26th of January to 22nd of February. 8.4 is instruments of appointment and authorisation Planning and Environment Act. Councillor Gento.
Procedural motion, Mr Mayor, that we move that in block, and I'm happy for it to go to vote.
Councillor Skinner.
Happy to support that.
Any speakers against? Any other speakers? All those in favour? Unanimous? Councillors, are there any requests for leave of absence? Councillor McEwen.
Through Mr Mayor, I'm having at long last an operation on my knee in early May. I'm not sure what meetings I'll be able to come to, so I'd like to seek a leave of absence with the understanding that if I am able to move and travel, I will come. But I just want to lodge that.
Yeah, all those in favour of...
Point of order,
Sorry.
Councillor McEwen needs to indicate the extent of the leave of absence. Is it indefinite?
No, it's no.
No, sorry.
Sorry.
Thank you.
So all those in favour of that? Unanimous?
Wish you well.
Councillor Alex.
Mr Mayor, if I may, I'd like to move schedule motion that we move to the next order. Mr Mayor, if I may, schedule motion that I'd like to move to the next order of business, given that we have a significant topic to discuss in our confidential session that we have been allocated and may go for a bit longer than what we deserve.
Some procedural motions, so we can go straight to the vote. All those in favour?
Mr Mayor, point of order.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's been moved to the vote. Councillor McEwen, Councillor Skinner, Councillor Gento, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich. All those against? All those abstentions? Councillor Cousin.
Mr Mayor, this is an abusive process.
Councillor, please stop interjecting.
Mr Mayor,
Procedural.
point of order.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not a procedural motion to move to the next item of business.
No, absolutely.
I mean, this is just a
Councillor Fawcett, you've made your point. Please sit down. It is a formal motion and was moved properly.
Could we please make a note in the minutes that this has been done wholly and solely to stop Councillor Fawcett and myself from speaking in reports? That's been done wholly and solely to stop us making a final speech.
I may remind the Governor that all council reports can be submitted in writing.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a point that we weren't advised that you were going to jump over, that you had Councillor Argento prepared to jump over the item so we couldn't speak?
I wasn't aware what you were going to say, Councillor.
Councillors, Mr. CEO, is there any urgent or other business in today's agenda?
Mr Mayor, I have some urgent business.
Mr. CEO.
Mr Mayor,
No,
I have
CEO.
urgent business.
Seems there's urgent business. Councillor Fawcett, Mr. Mayor.
You didn't know about this?
I didn't know about this, no.
Councillor Fawcett.
Mr Mayor, the urgent business is I'd like to refer councillors to the public meeting that was held last Thursday on the 14th of March that I think councillors would like to be acquainted of.
Councillor Fawcett, that's not urgent business. Please sit down.
It is urgent business because I will no longer be here after this meeting, Mr Mayor.
Please sit down.
What's your ruling?
Please sit down.
What's your ruling, Mr Mayor? That it's not urgent?
It's not urgent. Please sit down.
I'd like to move a motion to set the motion, Mr Mayor.
That's a formal motion.
Yep.
All those in favour of the dissent in the Chair's ruling? Councillor Fawcett, Councillor Brown. All those
Just as a
against?
group of six.
Councillor Argento, Councillor Skinner, Councillor McEwen, Councillor Hill, Councillor Rich and Councillor Cousin, will you voting?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to request leave of absence from here, if I may.
Please take a seat, Councillor.
It seems that...
Please take a seat, Councillor.
You keep turning my microphone
I've asked you to
off.
sit down, Councillor.
I'm seeking leave of absence, Mr Mayor. May I speak?
Councillor, please take a seat.
May I speak?
No, please take a seat.
I'll be talking to the press afterwards, Mr Mayor.
If you do not take a seat, I will adjourn the meeting.
I beg your pardon.
Please take a seat.
Well, adjourn, we'll speak to the press.
Mr. CEO, are there any petitions?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. Yes, there are petitions. On screen, Mr. Mayor.
Hey?
Councillor Cousin.
No.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and fellow councillors. It's good to get onto something connected very strongly with the community.
Sorry, I can't hear you.
What is this in?
This is a petition I have received on behalf of residents, 25 signatories, residents from Reading. They are requesting, they are, authorised and valid petition that has been lodged by 25 people to remove, that affects the bollards in Forest Way. I know it may sound a small matter to you, but for 25 people it's a very strong issue. It's to change the position of bollards in Forest Way to make an area more accessible. The purpose of this is to lay this matter on the table to enable council officers to report on this and bring a report back to council. I move that council receive and note the petition and the petition lay on the table until the next ordinary meeting of council to enable officers to prepare the report.
Okay, so moved by Councillor Cousin, we have a seconder. Councillor Skinner. Councillor Skinner, please to speak to it. Any other councillors to speak to it? Okay, all those in favour? Unanimous?
Mr Mayor,
Please be quiet, Councillor Fawcett.
I'm making a point of order.
No, well, make a point of order.
I beg your pardon?
Your
Is your
point of
immediate
order.
response to say no?
Your point of order.
Okay. I'd just like to say that you did mention that I can put my council report in writing, so I'm going to
Yes.
put that in writing.
Thank you. Mr. CEO, are there any questions, previous questions I noticed that you've asked?
It's working in progress.
Just really,
It's not lovely. I know. No, thanks, Joe. Yes, Mr. Mayor, I have questions that were taken on notice for the last meeting. Mr. Walter Bricknell is here on the day. Birkenville, thank you, Councillor Skinner. Is he here today? Yes. Did you want to read these out?
Yes.
Yeah, please do, if you'd like to go to the podium. Yeah.
I haven't asked a question of the council before, so I've got a question to start with, and that is how much background you give to a question, because sometimes you can say, how is the business structured?
Just, you need to stick to your questions as written, please. Thank you.
Okay, how is the quarry at 175 Mickle Road, Fish Creek, recently granted an authority to recommence operations without access to the 1992 planning permit nor Administrative Appeals Tribunal ruling? Do you want all three questions at once?
Oh, no, I'll go through them and respond as you go. I think that's the best, thank you. The quarry was not granted an authority to recommence operations. The quarry has continued to operate since it obtained a planning permit. A landowner applied for a certificate of compliance to recognise existing use rights. Existing use rights can be established with proof of continuous use of a period of 15 years. The operator is able to demonstrate an existing use through the reporting obligations to the Victorian Government under their work authority administered by the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions. An existing use right is unable to be established if the following applies. At any time before or after commencement of the 15-year period, the use has been held to be unlawful by a decision of a court or tribunal. And second, during the 15-year period, the responsible authority has clearly and unambiguously given a written direction for the use to cease by reason of its non-compliance with the scheme. At no point before or after the commencement of the 15-year period did a court or tribunal hold the use to be unlawful. The decision of the AATR, which is the authority that administers this, in 1992, held it to be lawful. Should the operator seek to vary or change the nature of the existing use, a planning permit would be triggered and the application would be subject to public notification and advertising.
Okay, thank you. And then that probably takes us to the second question, which is around the end of that permit. And what action did council take when the quarry's permit expired in 2002, including site rehabilitation?
Thank you. In response to question 2, Council granted an extension to the permit on the 12th of August 2003. Council undertook investigations relevant to determining the appropriateness of the extension of time application.
Okay, thanks for that. And how has council monitored the operations of the quarry since 2002?
Council does not actively monitor the day-to-day operations of the quarry. Council is resourced to investigate and respond to complaints. Prior to recent concerns about the quarry operation changing hands, Council has not received complaints about the quarry operation since its original approvals. Many of the day-to-day operations fall under the jurisdiction of the Works Authority and under the remit of the Department of Jobs, Precincts and Regions. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you for your answers.
Thank you for your question.
Yes. And I have another set of questions from Mr. Paul Norton, who I can't see here today. Is Mr. Norton here? No. We'll take his question and we'll put that in the minutes. There's no need to read that as Mr. Norton is not here. And we also have another set of questions from Mr. Blau. If Mr. Blau is here today with Mr.
Yes, he's here.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I'm jumping the queue.
Mr. CEO, is there any specific questions from today? Councillors?
Yes, there is, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor?
Mr. Mayor, Mr. Blau has submitted some questions, and I understand Mr. Blau would like to read those questions out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, my name is Gus Blow, I'm from the Phoenix Bay, still the much neglected area of the Shire. Hasn't changed for the last 10 years, I think. I have my personal opinion and comments related to agenda item 7.1, the notice of motion 724 just discussed and debated. Question number 1, does the council agree that openness and transparency is far better used to serve all of us ratepayers and residents than to serve just one councillor? Question number 2.
Sorry, just 1 minute, please.
Yeah. I was just getting the questions from me. That's okay. We'll just take that question on notice. Thank you, Mr. Blau.
Yeah, that's a pity, you can't answer it now.
Question 2.
And very convenient, I might say. Question number 2, does the council agree that time and effort wasted, and it was 25 minutes I noticed on that rubbish, on self-serving grandstanding, I see in this motion 7-4, is much better directed to owning and correcting the real problems, such as the disastrous 2019-20 budget, and a disaster it is. Question number 3.
So we'll take that on notice too.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Blau. I must say, your questions are directed to the council, not to me, so it's not up to me to answer your questions per se, Mr. Blau. Thank you.
Thank you. Question number 3. Does council agree that this review, as per motion 724, pales into insignificance when compared to important matters such as the wiping out of the $28 million reserves we've had, new borrowings of $3.6 million in the new budget, and underlying operating losses of $4.2 million, all part of a serious decline and spending of our hard-earned money?
We'll have to get back to you on that one too.
Yeah, I'm not surprised. Thank you.
Thank you. So do we have a member to go into closed session? Councillor Rich.
Could I just please make a note of something first, please, Mr. Mayor?
No.
Can I please ask that my report be accepted into the minutes also?
Please remain quiet.
The other councillors are agreeing.
All councillors can submit written reports into their reports. That's fine. Don't need to stand up and ask for it. Councillor Rich is the mover. Have we got a seconder? Councillor Gento. Councillor Run, withdraw that.
Oh, my apologies.
Thank you.
That's all right, Councillor Rich.
All right, we have a mover, Councillor Rich, and a seconder, Councillor Gento. All those in favour? That's unanimous. I now declare the open meeting closed and will adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes to clear the room. Councillors, please be back here at